Fresh off his session with Mike Moritz at Disrupt is Steve Streit. He is the CEO and founder of GreenDot. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So congratulations this year on a successful IPO, one of the most notable IPOs in the tech industry. You mentioned on stage that Mike Moritz has kind of been a great advisor throughout this process. You call him very pro-entrepreneur, pro-company, and one of the good VCs out there. So kind of wanted to know the backstory of how you guys came together, how you knew that Mike Moritz was someone that you wanted to bring on board.
I don't know that I did. So we met in 2002, I think, and the investment was made in 2003. And my background was broadcasting. I was in the radio business and had come up with this idea. And the company was maybe only a year and a half or 2 years old at that point. And was not sure what venture capital was. I had made a decent amount of money in the radio business, and I was my own funder for most of that time. And then we had some angel funding from Tech Coast Angels and from some other smaller firms. So I was not familiar with Mike or really venture capital. And but one of our board members from one of the other smaller venture funds, Ginny Hanna and her husband Dave, knew Sequoia and said, Steve, as we get bigger, we're going to need venture funding, and you should meet Sequoia. And I said, who's Sequoia? And they said, well, it's this big firm out in Silicon Valley, Menlo Park. We'll take you there. We know them. We used to be part of one of their funds, and we'll introduce you. And that's how I became aware of Sequoia.
I see.
And we had the meeting, and Mike flew into our offices in Monrovia, which nobody's ever heard of, but Monrovia is like 10 miles east of Pasadena on the 210 freeway, for those of your viewers who are from Southern California. Yeah. Anyhow, so he came out there and met us, met the small management team we had, which was pretty tiny and young and inexperienced, frankly, at that point.
So at this point, I imagine you've Googled him, you've talked to others, who's this Mike guy? What was your first impression upon meeting him?
Well, remember, this would have been pre-Google,
oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
I don't think we had. Did we have Google in 2001, 2002?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Anyhow, so maybe I Googled them, I don't know. Maybe I Yahoo'd them or AOL'd them, I'm not sure. But anyhow, we were ready to meet with him and knew he was an important guy. But we had a number of competing term sheets. And Mike's presentation, he was with Roelof Botha, who's one of his partners, still is today. And Roelof and he sat at our conference room table, and I just liked him. He just seemed like a good guy. He seemed very pro-entrepreneur and very pro-business, and seemed logical and said all the right things. And a lot of what I do in business is by feel. So I couldn't remember what he said, but I remembered how I felt, which was valued and honored and like somebody who could work with this guy. And then the term sheets came in, and we had a competing firm out of Los Angeles. I remember their name, but there's no sense of bringing it up. And so we had this term sheet, and it was like 8 pages of all the ways that they could screw me. And it really was a scary term sheet. And then Sequoia sent their term sheet in, and I think it was 1 page. And basically it said is, we'll invest this at this valuation. Sincerely, Sequoia. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was a very basic term sheet. And my attorney thought that they forgot to send the rest of the agreement. So they said, no, that's it. It's very simple. And I thought, wow, a simple term sheet, a very interesting presentation. Let's go with Sequoia. And obviously we were aware of their brand name and that they were the gold standard in VC, so it was an honor for them to invest for us too. And that's how we made the decision.
So what tips would you give entrepreneurs out there who are looking for investors, whether that's a VC or a super angel or just a regular angel? I mean, is it about the term sheet? Is it about that gut feeling that you had?
All that. But look, let's be real. Most startups are not in a position where they can pick and choose among the 17 term sheets that they get. If you need money, you need money. And many entrepreneurs I've met had to take the money they had to take when they had to take it.
Yeah.
So I guess if you have a choice, which frankly many don't, but if you have a choice of 3 or 4, feel is important. Clearly the term sheet, because the term sheet has been written, in my view, this is just my personal view, by the VC firm or the private equity firm later in a company's life, based on their experience of what they do and don't do. And if you get in a term sheet that has all kinds of crazy liquidation preferences and 25 ways that they can replace the management and control the vote and all kinds of things, that's not accidental. They're doing that because that's probably the kind of firm they are. And they intend to use those powers, otherwise they wouldn't have it in there, right? So the term sheet is important, and it gives you an inside look into what the firm is feeling in terms of how they invest. So term sheet's important. Yeah. Feel is very important. Do they understand your business? Do you like you? Do they like you? Do you like them? Do you get along together? All that's important.
So fast forward from that first meeting with Mike to getting ready to IPO. And this morning at Disrupt, we talked a lot about whether or not a company should IPO. You know, what are some of the things that they have to think about? Was the decision to IPO difficult for you? What went into that thinking?
It wasn't difficult once we got to it, but I never wanted to deal with it early on, so it took us a decade to get there, right? And because an IPO is not easy, it's very expensive. Takes up a massive amount of hours, in particular of your chief financial officer, and a lot of skill. Many young companies don't have a CFO who has that level of skill or background, and we're fortunate that we have a young staff that's grown with us, and they're very, very good. And John Keatley, our CFO, is a genius, and he was able to handle that. It takes a company that doesn't have a lot of potholes because you have to build your story, and the story will be shot at by people who are not your friends. So does it hold water? Does it make sense? Will sophisticated investors out of Fidelity or a T. Rowe Price or Wellington and others believe in the story so that it's a successful IPO? Will a major bank want to take you on? So you have to be ready to do that. It's no small venture to do that.
What do you think was the biggest challenge or the thing that kind of kept you up at night during that process?
Making sure your business doesn't suffer. At the end of the day, and this is true, and people who know me will tell you it's true, I never check the stock price. I forget. I always forget that we're
Where are you
public.
right now?
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't checked it today. It's a good example. I couldn't tell you. I know last week we were in the 50s, and I think we're still in the 50s, but I don't know. Not because I think it's a bad idea. In fact, if I think about it, I will check it because it's fun to do. But it just isn't on my mind because at the end of the day, if your customers aren't happy, if you're not selling products, if you're not making plan, if you're not serving your regulators and making sure the consumer advocacy groups love your product, and if you're not running your company, then you're not going to have a stock price anyhow, so who cares? So I tend to still be obsessed with the same things today that I was before the IPO, you know? But I'm glad we did it. It's providing some currency and flexibility down the road should we ever decide to make acquisitions. It provides and connotes a sense of stability and governance to the company, which is important to investors. And it's, as an entrepreneur, it's a wonderful life experience. I'm glad we've done it, but it doesn't change the fundamentals of the business, and that is I have to make sure a customer wants a GreenDot account, and when they have it, they have to love it, and we have to make sure we're treating them fairly, and that doesn't really change just because you go public.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Best of luck to you. Once
Thank you.
again, my guest today has been Streit, and he's of GreenDot.